Welcome, gentlemen. We've heard a bit now about the leadership roles of both Norway and China, really, in driving forward a new growth model. You could say that within this, there's sort of an embedded assumption about the continued centrality of the nation state, the unit of power that's really dominated political life since the 17th century. But of course, before that, cities were seats of power. And more and more observers are beginning to wonder whether we could be seeing a return to these like old times. And I'm also struck that I've read before that trust in cities is even higher than in national governments. And of course, we all know how they punch above their weight in terms of economic power. Someone mentioned New York earlier today. Its GDP is 1.5 trillion, larger than that of Argentina, Australia, large economies like this. At the same time, of course, they're disproportionately dirty across several fronts, one could say. Covering just 3% of the world's surface area, they emit 80% of the global greenhouse gas emissions. And so the question that we want to put to you is, are cities saboteurs or saviors? Raymond, I saw today that Oslo got some rather nice praise today from, or was it yesterday, from Bonn, from none other than Arnold Schwarzenegger, who praised, that's not bad, praised Oslo's leadership in climate. So I think I can guess what side of the debate you're on, but I'll leave you to tell us in your own words. Over to you.
Okay, as you rightly said, I've been for the last few days in Bonn and at the UN climate conference, and I think I have to say that I'm even more convinced than ever that the cities is playing really a very vital role. The fact that for the first time in history, more than 50% of all the population on the planet lives in cities, and at the same time we are responsible for 70% of the pollution. So we're a part of the problem, definitely, but we are at the same time a part of the solution. So we are also here, the digitalization, the urbanization, it's going rapidly on. So we have to put a standard, and here in Oslo we had adopted newly a climate and energy strategy, and we have big ambitions. We want to reduce the emission by 95% by 2030. And I'm happy to say that we just recently reached the tipping point, and the emission in Oslo are now declining, which is very positive. And also for the first time, more than half of the population in Oslo use public transportation. And maybe that is why, some of the reasons why we were chosen as the European Green Capital for 2019. And we are just about for preparing for that. So we want to work very closely together with academia, together with the private businesses, to really put the standard and focus on what we have achieved in Oslo, but even more, we want to focus on what we want to achieve together with all the different partners. So this is also the opportunity to invite people to participate, come forward with new solutions, and also to propose fields of new cooperation.
Thank you. Per, over to you. What's your take?
My take, if I come to this with the city or the trust in the city, I think we have become partly afraid of the future, especially in the Western world. We have globalization, we have environment, we have so many things that threaten us. And when we make the future very small, we get introverted. We look inside. And this is something I see today. I'm getting close to 50. I didn't feel it when I was young. And we need to stand up a vision. We need to make the future larger again. We heard a vision here, how you can solve problems. This was a very powerful vision about how to solve greenhouse, global warming and renewable energy. So in that sense, and cities has had more growth than the rest of the surrounding. And therefore, I believe there is more trust in them. Because in a growing environment, it's possible to take a position, it's possible to do something. So we need to find a bigger future again. We need to take away the partly guilt the city feels for sucking out for the surroundings. We need to find solution here showing that the city gives back. The city is an enabler for other things. You will not have big windmills in the city, but by doing things here, we can enable big windmills. So finding the solutions, finding the connection. But most of all, we need not to be afraid of the future.
Fantastic. I really like your point about growth and trust hanging together as well. I think that's a really important point for us to take forward. So cities, one thing is to make the city itself more sustainable and future fit, and I think this is where you were sort of getting to at the end there, Ped. Cities can also be a great test bed for new technologies and approaches. Could you maybe share a little bit about what cities like Oslo have done to advance progress towards the energy transition and how they work with other cities to sort of transfer those learnings elsewhere?
In Norway, we are in a lucky position. That's 95% of our energy is already renewable by hydropower. So I think it's fair to say that we, Oslo, together with the national government, we have done a lot of progress in the change that we are now called unofficial, the world's capital for electric vehicles, and that we together with the states have used different incentives. The states has made it easy to buy electric vehicles. It's no VAT, it's almost no taxes, and it's possible to drive in the bus lanes. So it's easy to buy. At the same time, we have put forward also some local measures. Free parking, free charging, and almost free to drive through the toll ring. So all this together had led to the change. In September this year, 47% of all the new cars sold in Oslo were electric vehicles or hydro plug-in. So we have come quite a distance. So to use the different incentives together with the state, and I think, and that was also an important outcome of what we learned in Bonn, that we not just can focus on the climate change itself because it's sometimes some distance. So we need to focus on the more local pollution. So still in a city like Oslo, 200,000 people lives in the so-called red zone. So for that reason, to focus on to lowering the air pollution, it's also the NOx emission and the climate CO2 emission at the same time. So I think the cities throughout the world was to focus on local means to act locally, but to think globally. It's still very, very important because I think the ordinary people finds that to reduce the CO2 emission is so far away.
Feels a remote,
yes,
a remote challenge.
Yes.
Per, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, I'm coming back to this that we many of the problems we have and many of the things when we define them and how the solution is very often to do less. I were in my 10-year-old daughter's class to talk about energy, and I asked, what do you want to do to save the environment? And I heard many things about, I will eat less meat, I will travel less, I will do less of many things. And then I asked, is there anything you can do more of to make the environment better? So we have ended up in a very passive, almost destructive mood that the only solution to the problem is to do less. And when we move into cities, when we become more people, we cannot do less. We have to do more. We have to turn salt water to fresh water. We have to make earth that was not fertilized before fertilized. We need to travel more. We will have to do more, and we need to adapt to that and find a solution to that. So less will not be the solution. But then we also need green energy, because that's the only way to do it. Because then you have more.
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, what did your daughter and her friends say to your challenge? Were they able to come up with anything?
Planting tree, which is very good, which is a very good solution. But I would hope that the young generation could feel that they could actively do something instead of being passive. When passive becomes the solution, we make it very, very difficult for the young generation.
Absolutely. And they sort of then have to make all the sacrifices because of our excesses.
Yes, and therefore I feel then we get afraid of the future.
Thank you. So I mentioned in my introduction, just throughout there, that, could we be seeing a sort of devolution? Could there be a devolution of power to cities in the future? Do you think cities will become as important politically as they are economically anytime in the future?
Definitely. When I were when I was in Bonn, it was a lot of what do you call it?
Pins?
Pins, yes, not even the pins. Whereas America, and I saw in small letters it was "We are still in," and it was all the mayors throughout U.S. that stated very hardly that we are still in, and they meant in the Paris Agreement. So they definitely want to push that agenda, and when cities like L.A., New York, San Francisco, Houston, Austin, all of these countries, they say very strongly that we are still in, and we want to do our part of the work. So they still push the agenda. So I think that even President Trump, he has to listen to that. The cities throughout the world, they are just not economical power, but political power at the same time. But let me follow up on that, because I totally agree with Per that we have to do more. And we as a city, we can also use our purchasing power even more. We are talking about innovative procurement. So we need to deal closely together with the businesses, and we have done that in Oslo. For example, we have been able to create some small project on fossil-free construction sites. We have been very, very clear in our procurement that we want these sites to be fossil-free. And the private business, they are ready. They are ready, and we have had Jordal Amfi, which is a new hall here in Oslo, and some kindergartens. They are already been built fossil-free, and emissions coming out of these construction sites are quite severe. So that's also what we can do, to use our power together with the business life. And we, for example, in Oslo, it's 25 billion Norwegian kroner, or 25 billion kroner each year that we are buying goods and services. So we are quite powerful, and we want to use it, but in cooperation with the private business.
Fantastic. And I think, Peder, that's just to hit that question back to you. What do you feel about the sort of collaboration between government and business in this space?
I believe people and consumer has the power, and people lives in cities. So the city has the ability to be faster, making faster decision in that sense. And the cities worldwide is the growing part. That's why cities can be faster. A shrinking city will not be fast. It's only a growing city. So once again, but we also, from the city point of view, we need to show that this goes everywhere, that everyone benefits from this. So once again, cities today have a leading position, but that's because they are in a growing environment. you believe in the future when you are there. And that is the key issue. If that disappears, you will not be in a leading position.
So final question. The Prime Minister only mentioned in passing sort of her personal leadership philosophy, if you like. I think she mentioned optimism. Can we just round up by giving sort of one sentence from each of you on what your sort of personal leadership philosophy is?
To be visionary, to be predictable and clear where you want to go, and include people. When you have plans, you have to include the people so they knows where you want to go.
Fantastic.
I totally agree. You need structure, but you also need a vision. And the vision is a necessity. It's something you have to have. Otherwise, there will be no leadership. It will only be cost cutting.
Exactly. So a good blend of vision and practicality. Thank you both very much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ted. Thanks very much.